Welcome back to Northwest City Politics in the Know with Juanita. We're glad that you're with us again this week for our show. We're very glad that there are people like you out there that are interested in what's happening in the cities in our area. Because it is important for good government that there's citizens that are following what's happening and letting their mayors and city council people know what they think, and then that there's a flow of information back and forth between those two groups and the city staff. So we're very glad that you're out there with us again tonight. If you haven't watched our show before, each week we'll have something on of one of the 9 cities in Northwest Community Television's viewing area and learn about some of the issues that are current and up and coming in those cities. And we'll ask you, particularly if you're from Brooklyn Center tonight, that you take down our guest, who is Mayor Tim Willson, take down his phone number and his email, and then you can be in contact with him if there's an issue that you want to share your ideas. So we're very glad to have you with us again.
Mm-hmm.
You've been with us many times.
Yes, I have. It's always been joyful to be here.
So. And we always learn lots of good information about what's happening in your city.
Yep.
So I'm going to let you introduce yourself in general to our audience, for the people that don't know you.
Well, I'm Mayor Tim Willson. I've been the mayor for now, this is my 9th year, my 3rd term.
Right,
and,
right.
When this term is finished, there will be a 12-year stretch, and I plan on running again as well.
Very good, very good. Well, see, we have an announcement on our
There
show,
you
right?
go, there you
That's
go.
good,
A
that's
scoop.
good. All right, got to do that once in a while. I thought we'd start out by talking a little bit about Shingle Creek Crossing.
Mm-hmm.
People have to get aware of this is the new name.
Mm-hmm.
I won't even mention an old name. This is the new name for all of the shopping opportunities that are at 100 and 694.
Yes.
Right. But I'm going to ask you to give us just a little bit about the history leading up to what's been happening in that area.
Yeah, the previous site was basically an enclosed mall.
Right.
And now we have a developer in, he's been developing the whole site more of individual sites and individual places. And it's going well.
Mm-hmm.
The only drawback that I can see so far is that, we were trying to entice a restaurant or something into there as well.
Right.
And that hasn't happened yet. But we've had a number of businesses now locate there. There's been some new ones like TJ Maxx and the Wings place just opened, just had a ribbon cutting and stuff. So we have almost full occupancy there.
Oh.
And there's still at least one building that's being built and probably a second one as well.
Okay.
And eventually, if we have 2 prime spots for restaurants, and those are right along where we daylighted Shingle Creek.
Oh, that'd be pretty to have that as a backdrop for it.
Yep. So
now, how many phases have there been? I know there was a phase 1 and a phase 2. Briefly, what was built in both of those phases?
yeah, phase 1 was basically getting the site, tearing it down, and I think Walmart was the first big
change.
Yeah, and then phase 2 was to work through some of the satellite sites
right.
as well. And we've had, I think, a phase 3, a phase 4. I don't know if we're up to phase 5 yet, but there's been subtle changes in the planned unit development that we've gone through as well. All of them have been fairly successful. I think we've only had one business that has relocated already. Which is fine. That space has already been filled, and all in all, people that have located there have stayed.
Well, that's a pretty good track record.
Yep.
Right, because it was an area that needed help for a long time, right?
Oh yeah.
And now it's on a bustling new trajectory.
Yes.
What are the newest businesses that have come there for people that might not have shopped in that area for a while?
The Wing store is one of them, and then I mentioned TJ Maxx.
Okay.
And I can't for the life of me remember the other one at the moment, but they're right on the corner, just south of Walmart. There's going to be a tires, discount tires place. That's one of the buildings that's being built now, and there are plans for like we were talking about earlier, for a couple of restaurant pads as
Sure.
well, although we don't have any takers
Okay.
there yet. So
It all takes time, and the positive development that gets going spurs developers to say, oh, maybe I should go there too, right?
yeah, it sure does. But you're right, it takes time. And the reason it takes a lot of time is there's a lot of dollars involved.
Oh, right.
So it isn't something that you just go in and throw
Right.
down a few bucks and I'm going to be there as a business. With that developer, we've probably got, or not the city,
Right.
but that whole development area is probably $100 to $150 million.
Wow, yeah, that
And-
is a
yeah.
big chunk of money.
Yep.
So people want to make sure that it's going to turn out the way they want it to.
Turn out the way they want it to, and that they're going to get paid back.
Right. That's an
Too.
important part.
Yes.
That's an important part. And the city monitors it all, right?
We don't monitor per se. The
Okay.
developer does most of that, but we have the planned unit development and the planning and zoning pieces.
Okay, that's a better term, right?
Yes, with the developer. So we have some limited control over how we want the site to look and where the different pieces are put. But all in all, it's the developer who
Right,
owns it
right.
and will maintain it long term.
Now, there are some other development lots of them, but where we were going to talk about, you were telling me about on the Cars for Heart site,
Yes.
which is on Brooklyn Boulevard. And maybe you can identify it a little more closely. You've got some new things going.
Yeah, it's about 61st or 62nd.
Okay.
And it's just south of where Bridgman's,
Right,
the ice cream store,
right.
used to be. We have been successful in getting some dollars, some loaning, and a developer who's looking at building an assisted living and elderly living facility. And it's going to be about 120 or so units.
Oh, that's pretty good size.
It's pretty good size.
Yeah.
It's something the city, and I know the council has talked about for quite a few years, even before my time, that
Right.
some sort of facility like that for people who are aging in our community who want to stay in our
Right,
community.
right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, what's the term? Housing that covers your lifetime, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So that, and you don't have a lot of senior areas in your city, do you?
We have a couple,
Okay.
but it's not enough to service all
right,
the need.
right.
So, yep.
And then can you tell us a little bit about the process of the city staff and the council in there? We kind of alluded to it, but I thought maybe you could spell it out a little bit more.
Yeah, we have, well, first of all, the council gives direction
Okay.
to staff and desires to have redevelopment happen.
Right.
That's an initiative that the council has backed for as long as I've been on the council. And so that generates then direction to the city manager,
Okay.
who has our development specialist, redevelopment specialist,
Right.
I should say. And he, Gary Idle,
Okay.
has done a lot of work for the city in getting redevelopment to happen in a number of different places.
Oh, yes.
With Luther's in the
Ah,
Brooklyn Boulevard
right,
corridor there, with Caribou and the buildings just south of that, and now on the end of Osseo Road or Brooklyn Boulevard,
Right.
where Hull Fertilizer used
Oh,
to be.
right,
Yeah,
right.
there's a office complex going up there. They've been digging dirt and doing soil remediation now for quite a while, and when they get that done, they'll start a building in there.
And
so.
it takes a lot of that work in the background that nobody sees before the shovel gets into the ground.
Yeah, it does. And unfortunately, in the past, people weren't quite as aware of the environment as we are today.
Right.
And we wind up with properties that do need some sort of remediation.
right.
The 57th and Logan one now, we can start redeveloping that one, but we were pumping water there for quite a while for the chemicals from a dry
Right,
cleaning operation
right.
that had gotten there. And then with Hull Fertilizer, now you wouldn't think that they had a fire that there would be any environmental impacts,
Yeah, I wouldn't.
but there is with all the fertilizers.
Oh, from the
And
past.
yes, and the agricultural things
yeah.
that they had in the building at the time. Fortunately, it was during the winter, so as they pumped water
Right.
into it, it froze.
Right.
They were able to take that away, and they put it out in a site in the county, which ultimately then about 10 years or about 8 years ago, they had to clean up that site as well, just because that's where they put it.
Right.
But all of that soaked into the soil, and that's where they're at right now, is digging that soil out. That'll go to an environmental treatment area, it'll get treated, but then that has to be done to a certain depth. There's cores that have been taken. MPCA has been there, Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and interesting enough, the Department of Agriculture as well, because of the agriculture. Yes. So both of those agencies now have come to an agreement on how we can mitigate it, how the developer can mitigate it, and a plan on how to do so, and then build the building. So.
Now, the city also sometimes does things to help encourage developers to do certain things. In those particular ones we've just talked about, maybe you can mention how the city added a little bit to the process.
Yeah, it's called TIF monies.
Right.
Is the short name. It's actually tax increment financing. And that's where we can define a taxing district. A good example is Shingle Creek Crossing, where that whole area is one of those taxing districts. There are others too. The FBI building where that is in one as well. So then what we do is we can take the dollars that are above the current property values. So say there's something where nothing's built on it. It's just land sitting there. So it has a tax value. And then we build, say, a $60 million structure on it. Well, now the difference, that's the tax increment. That goes into a pool that the city can use to entice people to come in and do redevelopment. So we, at times, will defer some of the tax liabilities for some of the businesses. We will provide some dollars, like we did with Shingle Creek Crossing. About $1 million or so there, which is fairly low.
For what you got.
Yeah, but we wanted to see good amenities there with walking, sidewalks, trees, and stuff like that. So we, kicked in a little money into it and then a little bit to entice the developer to come in and develop the property. So.
And that's part of the whole process too.
Yes,
now,
it is.
What's the time frame for the senior high-rise building?
That will start deconstruction yet this year, this fall and winter, and then I don't have the timeline as to when they'll start, but it'll be sometime in the next year or two, probably.
So it's at the very beginning stage, right?
Yeah. Well, it's at the beginning stages, but the city owns the land, and we're going to start deconstructing.
Oh yes, and that's part of what the TIF money goes for too, right?
Yes. And you have to do all the remediation there too, asbestos, whatever building material was there. So it gets to be a long process and a lot of dollars involved. Doesn't happen overnight. So.
Now we'll shift gears and we'll talk about a process that's getting underway. We'll talk a little bit about Brooklyn Center's fiscal condition, but also about your beginning work now on the 2016 budget.
Yes.
And maybe we could start about, because it's one of the things that are good about Brooklyn Center, what is your bond rating and how does that affect what happens in the city?
Well, we currently have a AA bond rating. It was increased a couple of years ago. So the better rating we have, the less it costs us to bond for dollars or borrow dollars, basically. And a good example of that is when the water treatment plant that's currently under construction was an $18 million project. We then got a very good bond rate for those dollars. We also got some assistance from the state and I think the federal government as well in that project. But that's a good example of what that bond rating
Right,
does. The
right.
better your bond rating, then the less it costs you to borrow money.
Yeah, so it's a big plus for the people in Brooklyn Center.
Yes. Brooklyn Center itself, and the things that we have bonded and the dollars we have, there's a set ratio for each city based on its property values within that city as to how much you can bond for. And if you can't exceed that by state law, we're actually very, very low in that whole total.
Oh, that's very good.
We have tried to maintain over the years kind of a pay-as-you-go type attitude or strategy.
Right.
We also have worked out over the years where things like our water and sewer services, electricity, those types of things are prorated out over 15-year periods so that we can keep the highs and lows pretty even.
Right.
Otherwise, what happens is you'll have a poor couple of years, or you need a new water tower or something, and it's a lot of dollars. Well, if you haven't planned for it, then you've got a couple of years of high water rates.
Oh, right, right.
And we've done very well with that.
Yeah, and I'm sure your citizens appreciate that.
Yeah, I would think so, yes.
Now, let's talk just a little bit briefly about the 2015 budget. What was the increase in the levy for 2015 that's affecting homes in your area now?
The levy in 2015 was 3.5 or so about for the levy. With then, there's a couple of caveats with that too. There's another couple of percent for special levies for like fire department or public safety and stuff like that.
Right, that are part of it, right.
So it comes out a little higher. This year we're looking at, I believe it's between 5 and 6.
Okay.
Today.
Right, current, right.
Yes, but the budgeting process is very new. It's just starting for 2016.
Yeah, and all of our cities are just getting into it.
Yes. By the time we get done, it'll be September or so, and then we'll have the final numbers. And you know, it's like everything else. Food goes up, gas goes up, everything else. Well, city services all go up too. So,
And then if people are interested, I always like to encourage people when the council is having meetings about the budgeting, people can always come and sit in on them, or they can look at your minutes from your meetings. So there's probably a very small group of people that want to follow it closely, but that it's certainly easy for them to do if they want to.
Yep, they're all at City Hall. They're all in the council chambers. It's they're all public meetings. In fact, I too would encourage people to come and sit in. We want to be as transparent as possible with what we're doing with the budgets. And the more that individual property owners and citizens in Brooklyn Center know what we're doing and how those budgets are derived, I think the better.
Oh, I think so too. Because I had somebody say a long time ago that if people understand that you're handling their money wisely, then tax increases have a whole different flavor than if they don't know.
Yes.
So
and that's true.
Right. So we'll encourage people, if you have any interest, follow it along, and then you'll know what's really happening.
Yep. When we get through the budget process, and it's a long process, it goes through the whole summer, but as you go through that whole process, all of a sudden you see a much more holistic view of the city and how many facets and how many things are going on in the city. Because all of those items have to be in that budget, and you can't exceed that budget once you have it. So, yeah,
it's an integral process that a lot of people don't know exactly what's happening. So, and then what's happening with local government aid? I got on the wrong topic. Local government aid and Brooklyn Center.
Well, local government aid is I think we got 1.2 million or so last year. We're supposed to get about a couple $100,000 more increase this year and this next coming year. Local government aid, we try not to spend on normal general fund things. And we tend to put a lot of those dollars into the capital improvement plan. And capital improvement is also out 15, 30 years or so. We've identified about 80 million in structures that need to be redone, roofs, you know, a HVAC or air conditioning and stuff, you know, for those buildings. New fire trucks are in there, you know, things like that. So there again, we're trying to put together a plan with a revenue stream so that we can make those purchases over the next 15, 20 years.
Well, yeah, because you know a lot of things that are going to be necessary in the future. And I think almost all, well, at least the cities that I'm aware of, are starting to do more long-range planning than they would have like 10 or 15 years ago, don't you think?
Yes, I would agree, yes. Yes, and citizens kind of demand that. You know, we were talking earlier about the highs and lows, like in your water bill. Well, if you can make that be pretty much level or a general increase over time, then it doesn't hurt so much for the property owners in making those payments. On the other hand, if you have to do a new water tower and you haven't planned for it and you don't have it,
it's very expensive.
Yeah, then you could see your water bill double or something, and we just don't want to do that.
Right. So. All right, so just track through the process all the way through December so people kind of know what's up and coming.
We have meetings now. We have 3 more meetings, 2 in August 17th, August 31st, and September 14th is a council meeting. At that September 14th meeting, we will have gone through all the budgets, all of the departments, all of the pieces, and then that's the preliminary budget for the city. The levy rate gets set, and the preliminary budget gets approved. Then that goes through November, then, where it's finally approved in total and becomes official then at that point for the next following year. We start that process about June or so every year, and the council meets on the 2nd and 4th Mondays of the month. The 1st and 3rd Mondays then are usually budget meetings.
Right.
Yep.
So this is a particularly good time of year if people have concerns about various things happening in the city, because all of the services that the city provides have costs applied to them. So it's probably a good time to start talking to like you or the other council members just to share ideas.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And there again, we would welcome people to come in and because we want to be as transparent as possible, and educate our citizens as well as to where those dollars are going and why. So while we're at it, I'll make a plug for our city commissions too, which are a great place to learn about housing, planning and zoning, those types of things. And I do have 2 positions on the Housing Commission, I think, that are open right now. Just filled a planning and zoning one. But they, you can get an application at City Hall and do so. And then it's kept on file, and as positions open up, then you're contacted for, you know, if you've checked housing or planning and zoning or whatever it is. And there's a fairly good turnover, you know, of people on those commissions. So you have a good opportunity to serve. It's volunteer. That's why there's some of the turnover. But we have been very successful with having people and residents in our community volunteer for those commissions. So.
Yeah, that's important.
Yes.
Now, a big plus for Brooklyn Center is that you're getting a new amphitheater, including a Veterans Memorial. And when did the idea of building an amphitheater in Brooklyn Center move from just kind of an idea to something that's going to maybe very shortly be reality, or it's almost there, right?
Almost there. My understanding is the latter part of September now. There will be a ribbon cutting and official groundbreaking and stuff. I'm also been made aware that the paper bricks that we have that are for purchase, that will go into the walkway and stuff, those are just now starting to be set. And I know I've purchased one in memory of my daughter, who passed away here in Brooklyn Center from a heroin overdose, which is a whole nother big story. But those pavers are a very nice way to memorialize things and do that. So they're for sale. They still are. You can still get them. So that whole process started with the Brooklyn Center's 100-year Centennial Volunteer Committee. And they put together the 100-year birthday. Well, they also talked about...
Which was what year?
Oh, boy.
Okay.
2010, 2011.
Okay, I was going to say a few years back.
Yeah, I forget offhand.
That's fine, no problem.
And nice celebration, by the way. The governor was there.
Yeah, I remember. And you had several events during the whole year.
Yes.
But it gave people's minds started bubbling with an idea, right?
Yes, that committee and people then were looking for something that they could do out of that process that would be a long-lasting tribute and acknowledgement for the city of Brooklyn Center. Well, that's when the Amphitheater dream came about then. So this whole volunteer committee then morphed from the Centennial 100-year birthday committee to the Amphitheater committee. And they have raised the funds to have this built, and the majority of them anyway. There has our good corporate neighbor, the Luther organization. They put in $150,000 as a donation for that. And now we're at the point where it's just about fully constructed and ready for use. In fact, right now and tonight, we were in a budget meeting and talking to the Parks and Rec department as well. And they're considering, okay, what should we do next year? And the things that are coming up are music in the parks, movies maybe, the Minnesota Orchestra may be interested in coming here. And then there are other groups like improv, groups of that nature, or, well, I don't know what exactly, skits and things, whatever. But we think it's going to be very highly used. We also think there will be citizens that will want to use that facility also for reunions, picnics, things like that too. And so we're working out all the details on how to make that facility be utilized as best as possible. So it's very exciting. We have had in that park, Centennial Park, right next to City Hall, our facility for a stage had been basically a semi-tractor trailer. And it had the sides would come down and stuff. Not the best thing for veterans or people with disabilities, and certainly not for rental or things like that. So now we've got a very nice facility that's going up in that amphitheater.
I want to thank you so much. We've covered a lot of information on a lot of good things that are happening in your city. So we appreciate your coming with us and sharing all these ideas with our audience out there who now know a little bit more about what's happening in the city of Brooklyn Center. And we'll encourage you to watch us again next week to see part 2 of Brooklyn Center's issues. And then if you've got a past program that you're thinking of you didn't get to see, be sure to check our YouTube site because it'll be available there. Bye, and we'll see you next week.